So welcome to this tutorial. So today we're going to be looking at making a block building system. So this could be used for a wide range of games, from sandbox games to space battle like strategy games. There are many uses for it. There are a few examples, but one of my favorite examples is Space Engineers. So what Space Engineers do, they actually tie theirs into a voxel system, and they are actually able to make huge galaxy class ships, small little fighters, or space stations. That's why I feel it's like a really good starting point for today, is to remember this is actually possible with the system we create. But for today, let's have a look at what we're going to create and cover today. So first, we want to be able to place new blocks next to existing blocks and attach it to the overall structure that would contain multiple blocks. So once we've got our blocks attaching to each other correctly, the next step would be able to rotate the blocks so that a unique shape, such as this one here, will be able to rotate and actually keep its rotation as well. It's crucial for certain type of blocks, such as thruster blocks, which may want to be facing in a set direction. So after that, we want to look at how we actually save that structure, how we can keep it and save it after the game has ended. So we can save the positions, the rotations, and even what type of block we want to have, and that's saving it into a file. And we're actually going to save it into a file today due to Unity not actually supporting saving prefabs at runtime, but hopefully in the future they will, and we'll do an update video on that when it happens. And then finally, we're going to be able to load that structure in. So all that data that we just saved, we want to be able to load that in, so we can actually see it in game. So let's jump into it, shall we? So before I start, just to mention that this starting project will be down below in the description, that you can download and take it from the start. So here we are in the block builder class. We've got we are using system.io, which is used for the saving and loading of files. So first of all, we have got 3 serialized fields. So we do have the private game object array of new block prefabs. So that will just contain an array of all the prefabs that we want to add, such as the cube and the thruster one. We also have a game object of new block prefab, which is just going to be the prefab that we are going to create next. And then finally we have the material, which is going to be a hologram material. So that could just be a green transparent that I have at the moment. And then we've got 3 private variables, 1 game object, which is the new block instance, which is the hologram block, a string, which is the last saved name, and that's just going to be a string of the last save that we just created. And then finally we have an integer, which is the current block index, which we just set to 1, so that's the starting point. So let's talk about how we actually go about creating our blocks. So the main method that we want to look at after we paste this in, make sure you got your start and update functions in because they're crucial for it to work, is the mouse over block function, where it calls in a reference called raycast hit. And basically what this does, we create a ray based on the camera's position and the mouse position, and we call a raycast using that array, and we send that out, which is basically a line from the camera's main mouse position out towards where the mouse position is in the world. And then from this, if we do get a hit, so if it hits a collider, then we check that collider has a game object, and if that game object has a tag, and if it's tag block, then we can go ahead and pass that hit data back as a reference and equal it to true. Another important method that we might want to include here is this update block type. So it just quickly switches between the different blocks types using the recreate block function. So we just pass it a 0 or 1 if we want it a cube or a thruster. So this function basically passes in that integer, and we basically use that integer into our function, into our array, and we equal that to our prefab. Basically, we destroy our hologram block, and then we go ahead and get that hologram block and equal it to a new instance of our new block prefab. and from there we just get the tag, make sure that it's untagged, and then from there just destroy the block component attached to it. So this is the main method for actually creating it, the blocks, and basically we use that raycast hit. We're going to send it as a reference into the mouse over block function that we talked about before. Make sure that we are pressing the left mouse button, and then from there we're just going to get a new game object, instantiate the new block prefab, and then from there set the parents to the block that we just hit. We get the spawn position, and then we set the spawn position based on the block that we hit and the block hit data normal. So that's the face of the collider that it hit. We offset that. We make sure that we add the block's unique ID by the current block index, and then from there we just set the local position to the hologram block local position, rotation, and then again we set the position based on the calculation that we just did. So from there we've now been able to create a new block, but we also want to create a new hologram block. So again we just check the mouse is over, we set the position and parent like we did before, and then again what we're going to have to do, make sure we loop through all the renderers and make sure the materials are set to that green hologram material, and then we just make sure that we disable all the colliders so that the raycast doesn't detect them. So now what we have to do to get the rotation is to use a function called getRotation, which I created earlier, and all we got to do is pass in a reference of new block instance. Let's go ahead and create this function. Here it is, and basically all we got to do is it's a private void. We pass in the reference of a game object called new block, and we simply use each of these if statements to check if a arrow is being pressed, so left, right, up or down, and then rotate those blocks in a set direction. So new block instance dot transform dot rotation, and then tell it what direction as a vector 3 in to rotate it. So the left and right would rotate in the Y, and then the up and down arrows would rotate in the Z axes. So that's how we do the rotation, and we pass that in here, and we use it here as we set the new block rotation to the holograms block rotation. So let's quickly look at how we save and load function structure sim. So here we'll head into our new functions, and the first one is how do we save or load. So here we're going to do a quick check in a statement just to check if our key button of S is pressed down and that our mouse is over a block. If it is, then we're going to quickly get the structure block, so this is going to be the parent block, and then pass that into our save structure function, which will save our structure. And then if we don't want to save but we do want to load, and then we just check if L is being pressed. If it is, let's just delete all the structures in the game at the moment, and then load in the current one of the last save name. So quick one, this get structure block, I'll highlight over it, so it just returns a list of game objects, and we pass in the game object of parent, and that simply just goes through and gets all the blocks of connected to the parent and puts them in the correct order and returns that back for us in a list of game objects. Get file path, we just pass it a string of called file name, and we return the string. Now what we do, we just pass it the file name, and simply it churns up and gives us a file directory basically in saves, in structures, in our user's app data, and then returns the file that we want. So getting to the actual saving of it, basically we just use a save structure function, and we pass it in the parent block. This parent block will be passed into the save name, so we just get the name of it, and we can use that later on. So we just tell the user that we're going to save this block. We're going to get the file path, and we're going to get the correct order of all the blocks connected. Now we actually get into the saving of it. So all this is, we open up the file, and this line basically will write to the file and create the line of whatever you pass it. So we're just going to pass it these hashtags, which are going to define like what type of data follows. So we have the save name, so it's going to be passing in the save name. We're going to pass in the date and time, and then how many blocks we have. Then we quickly loop through all the blocks. I'm going to pass it how many the block, what it's going to be, how many lines are going to follow it of data. Pass it its unique ID and prefab ID, so the block types, and then we're going to pass in if it's got a parent or not. So we're going to check if it's got a parent. If it has got a parent, we're going to pass in the index of that parent in the block array. We can use that later. If it doesn't have a parent, we'll set it to -1. And then finally, we're just going to get the position using the blocks transform.local position, and then the rotation based on the local Euler angles of their transform. And then finally, ending it off with hashtag block end, which ends the block. And then once you've got all the blocks sorted, we just do hashtag structure end, and you've saved all your structures. So going on to loading the structure, we get our structure name passed in. We make sure that it's all valid, the name is valid, and that the file exists using their structure name. We then go ahead and create our new structure game object, which is going to be the parent object. We have to add the structure block component and set the position to 0. We then have to open up the file using stream a reader, and that just opens the file. We make sure that the reader is actually reading and that the file contains data, and then we start looping through and reading every single line. So first we read in the new structure name, pass that in, and replace just gets the data after the hashtag. We make sure that we get our new blocks. If we have got a new block, we make sure that we loop through the following lines. So for the example, this new block would have 6 lines because we passed in 6. So we convert that into an integer and pass it into the index and loop for 6 lines. So we're reading that data. So we're going to be checking the IDs, the parent IDs, and the unique IDs, and we're just going to convert them all into integers. And so for parent prefab ID, we're going to be using that for the new block prefabs array, and so we can instantiate the new block. Parent ID, we're just going to pass their data into the block component's parent ID, and for the block component, for the unique block ID, we're just going to pass that into the block component's unique ID as well. Now for position and rotation, we've simply got the data being brought in, but then we're also going to be trimming it down, getting rid of the brackets and the commas in between, and then once we've got them the numbers into split up into different string arrays, then we can pass this into a new vector3 or a quaternion for rotation, and separate them and can pass them into floats. Once you do that, you can just pass those into your block component local position, and then block component local rotation, and then we can end the block there. And then finally, all we've got to do is make sure we've got the blocks in the correct order using our function, loop through each block, make sure the parent IDs are valid, and then making sure that we set the parent IDs to the parent ID that we have from our block component, and then pass that into our array as an index, and then just get our local position and our local rotation from the block components local position and local rotation. So that's that. So I've just quickly gone and opened up the file at this directory down here, which is that file that you just saved if you've actually gone ahead and tested what you just coded. And this is what the actual thing will look like. So you have your basic information up at the top there with like the date that we set, and then it'll separate each block into these little like separation into blocks. You'll have multiple of them depending on how many blocks you have, and then you have your structure end at the bottom there. So I thought I'd just show you quickly what that looks like. So just to show you a quick test of this, place a few blocks in your game. You can press S, it'll save it. You can press D to destroy all the structures, and if you press L, then you can load in your structures. So that was it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, do leave comments down below, and that's it. So thank you again, and good night.